A price floor is a legal minimum on the price at which you can sell a particular good. Now, there aren't a lot of these available for examples in the economy today. Not a lot of goods have a legal minimum. You are required to sell this good at least this price. Hard to think of anything like that. But I think that this example might help clarify. Hey man, how's it going? I had a quick question for you. You got a few minutes? Yeah, sure, man. What's up? So, I am moving some furniture this weekend into my place, and I was hoping to get some help with it. It'll probably take about 3 hours, and if it's cool with you, I'll give you $20. And we'll say 3 hours worth of work for $20. That sound good to you? You need some help moving? Yeah, I think I can help you with that. That's not a problem. $20 for 3 hours worth of work? Yeah, I think I would do that. Yeah, that sounds fair to me. Not so fast. Do you have any idea what our minimum wage is here? It's $7.25. You can't be getting your friends to help you move for less than $7.25. It's against the law. So this is sort of a simple example, right? But it drives at a more pressing point, right? Our main example of a price floor is the minimum wage. This is what we usually think of, the minimum wage. And basically it just sets the legal boundaries in which we can trade our labor for money and says, well, you got to pay people a certain amount of money for a certain amount of time. So let's kind of dive into this together and see what this might look like. All right, so here we are looking at price floors. Price floors. Price floor is just a legal minimum, a bottom dollar amount, a legal minimum at which you can sell a certain good. It's a minimum price, right? Just a minimum price. All right. Well, let's see what these minimum prices look like on a basic supply and demand graph. All right. So on the left here, we have a price floor that is not binding. So you see the equilibrium price is $3, equilibrium quantity is 100, and the government decides that they're going to set a price floor of $2. So you cannot sell an ice cream cone for less than $2. Well, if the equilibrium price is already above this, this is not going to be important, right? It's not going to change the nature of the market. The same number is going to be sold at the same price of these ice cream cones, right? Okay. But over here we have a price floor that is binding. So we'll have a legal minimum that is higher than our equilibrium price, right? So our equilibrium price still 3, and our new price floor is $4. $4. So notice what happens here. Our quantity supplied at this price is greater than our quantity demanded at this price. In fact, our quantity supplied is now 120 and quantity demanded is 80. And this means that we're going to waste some ice cream cones, right? Because there's more people that want to sell than people that want to buy at this price. So, gonna have some melted ice cream cones. I hear what you're saying. I see that a price floor can cause a surplus, but why do I care? I can't even think of an example of a price floor. Well, let's turn together to this graph. This graph is showing that for the last, 50 or 60 years, inflation-adjusted wages have not changed very much. The Americans' purchasing power has not changed very much. And all this means is that even though in numbers we make more than our grandparents did, once you account for how prices have changed, we may make about the same. We may be able to buy about the same amount as like our grandparents did in the 60s or our parents did in the 80s, right? Right. So some people see this as a pretty big problem. So in response to this, they propose a price floor in the labor market. And we call a price floor in the labor market minimum wage. Minimum wage. So let's go ahead and work through it together. Let's go through just a short list of the pros and cons of having a minimum wage or raising it, right? So arguments for, well, we want to help lower income families succeed, right? We want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to live in this country, right? We don't want people starving to death. We don't want people wallowing in poverty. This is not ideal. So you hear arguments, people say things like making minimum wage a quote-unquote living wage. So essentially enough to where one full-time worker can support a family. So that's an argument for it. We can debate whether or not that's true or whether or not that's a strong argument, but that's certainly one. This goal of promoting income equality, so we have that last slide. There's definitely a lot of Americans who are not really making much in inflation-adjusted dollars, not making much more than Americans in previous generations. And also, there's definitely some people on the top making a whole bunch of money. So people see this as a way to boost the wages of the working poor, those on the lower end of the economic ladder. And finally here, some people argue that raising the minimum wage could generate some new business. So people say that, if poorer folks have more money in their pockets, well, then that can open up more business by allowing those people to spend their money wherever they would spend it, and that could lead to some economic growth. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. Some arguments against. So first, the big argument that economists often make is that putting in a minimum wage or raising it to a binding number would cause some degree of unemployment. That's what this surplus is on the last slide, right? There's more people willing to work than jobs available at like these higher numbers of a minimum wage, say like the commonly tossed around number of $15 per hour, right? So some amount of unemployment is going to occur. And next, potentially we could see some inflation as, now I pay your McDonald's employees and your Kroger workers $15 an hour or whatever we set our new minimum wage to. Well, they have to pass on those cost increases, right? You could almost think of it as a change in input prices, recalling back to our What Can Shift Supply lecture. So they're going to have to pass on those cost increases to the consumer. So your goods at your various, your restaurants and your grocery stores are potentially going to become more expensive, and then the buying power of your dollar just goes down, and maybe the minimum wage doesn't do anything in the long run, just raising the number and then implicitly raising all the prices around it shortly after. Lastly, I wanted to mention that raising the minimum wage to a binding level could cause us to sacrifice some useful information about the market. So knowing the price that people are willing to trade their labor for dollars at is a useful price to know, right? It can tell us a lot about people's economic situations and what are the opportunities available to them. But by instituting a minimum wage, we may miss out on some of this information. And I'll go ahead and rattle on for just another minute. So if you were working at the federal minimum wage right now, full-time, you would make $7.25 an hour, or about $15,000 a year. This would make it hard to live, but in places like most of Kentucky, where cost of living is pretty low, you could certainly scrape by on $15,000 a year. It would be very difficult to raise a family or own a home, but you could scrape by on your own making just $15,000 a year. I do believe that that's quite possible. Not easy, but possible. It's a difficult issue, right? Because we want to ensure that lower income folks are able to succeed in the economy, but at the same time, we don't want to cause this unemployment. We don't want to cause unnecessary inflation. There's some potential drawbacks that we need to consider as we consider the potential benefits. Just like most issues, the minimum wage is not cut and dry at all. And this is one issue where even economists tend to disagree. Roughly a third of economists think that raising the minimum wage significantly will lead to some degree of unemployment. Roughly a third don't really know, and roughly a third think that it will not lead to significant unemployment. This is according to a survey that was done in our textbook. So it's not easy, right? This isn't cut and dry stuff, but you guys are smart and capable of weighing some of these difficult arguments for and arguments against and coming up with an opinion one way or another. So that's about it on the minimum wage for right now. I'll catch you guys next time. Thank you so much.